Hi, welcome to the Real Journeys of Success podcast. Yes, I'm your host, Rob Elliott. And today I've stayed a little local. Most of you know I've been interviewing people all around the world. This time I've really dug up a gem from where we call South Australia, which is, as it says, is in the southernmost part of Australia. He lives in the country. He is the founder of a business, you would say, that helps people break free from their corporate world and go into business themselves. He loves mentoring people. He loves helping them achieve who they are. Mate, welcome to the show, Gavin Sequeira.
Thank you very much, Rob. Pleasure to be here.
Mate, it's good to talk to a local for a change.
It's fantastic. I've seen some of your podcasts that you've done, and you do talk to people all over the world, so I'm happy to talk to another Aussie.
Yep. Good to see. That last name, that's really not Anglo-Australian. Where did that come from?
Yeah, look, so it's actually a Portuguese last name, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm a mixed background, as are most Aussies these days.
Yep.
So I'm half Indian, half Portuguese. That's my background.
Yep.
And Sequeira is a very strong Portuguese name, and I guess I inherited that from my great grandparents and going back several generations.
Wow.
So that's really where it came from.
Isn't that lovely to be able to keep the name?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Were you born in Australia?
No, I wasn't. So I was actually born in Pakistan.
Yes.
Which is a really interesting place. I never really lived there. I suppose I did till the age of 2. And born into a Christian family.
Yes.
And for those of you who know, Pakistan is a majority Muslim country. So I was already a very, very, very small minority of less than 1%.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, I lived there till the age of 2, and we moved from there to the Middle East,
yes.
Where I lived for 12 years in Kuwait.
Wow.
If you go back 30 years ago, a lot of people hadn't heard about it until the Gulf War, and then it became a famous place. But I grew up there. I did all my primary school. I studied there as a kid, and that's what I knew. And then we came to Australia about 33 years ago.
So how old were you when you came to Australia?
Now I'm giving my age away if you add all the numbers up, but I was about 13. I just turned 13. So came as a fresh teenager and a whole new way of life.
I was about to say, what a cultural difference from being Kuwait to Australia. Yeah. It must have been daunting for a 13-year-old.
Yeah, look, it was. I guess, I've got 3 younger sisters, and for some of them, it hasn't been that big a change because, they grew up as a kid in Australia, whereas I had friends, I had a bit of knowledge of a previous life, a previous country, and, just the little things that you and I, Rob, would take for granted, like clean air or drinking water out of a tap or just having grass in your backyard or trees in your backyard. Wasn't wasn't common at all. Kuwait is a really tiny little country on the map. It's mainly a desert, and you can't drink water out of a tap. At least back when I was there, you couldn't. Yeah. And so they're a lot of the things that I had to get used to just coming into a Western civilized country.
So where did you move to when you came to Australia?
Yeah, look, we came to Sydney. Yes. We moved to Sydney back in 1989.
Yep.
And actually, we first arrived in 86, went back to Kuwait, came back in 89 and moved for good, and grew up there. And I started high school, and if you know Sydney pretty well, but grew up on the northern suburbs of Sydney. So that's really where I started my life in Australia.
And is that where did you study when you finished school, or did you just go straight to work?
Oh, look, I did my high school, went to university, went to the University of Sydney, did a couple of degrees there, studied to be an engineer because I love tinkering with things and I love creating things. Yep. So I studied mechanical engineering and studied commerce as well. So I did a double degree. Yep. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. It's a bit of business, a bit of engineering. This will set me up in what I want to do in life. And then we had the whole year 2000 or Y2K sort of period that turned around, and there was a whole .com boom and the internet age kind of grew, and I got into IT, funny enough.
Wow.
And, so I didn't really go into engineering. I started off a little bit in engineering, but really used my engineering as more of a step into another field of IT and technology, and worked for big companies like IBM and Oracle, and kind of went up the corporate ladder in those companies.
So when you're at uni in Sydney, what was more
Yeah.
important, the social side or the study?
I'll be honest with you. I haven't told this too many people, but the social side was probably the more
shock horror.
Yeah, well, I loved university mainly for the fact that I got to meet a lot of interesting people. I got to my whole world expanded. When you're in school, you only know a few people, your friends, you live in the same neighborhood. You don't really know the world. When I got to university, everything changed. And I got involved in everything from different clubs, went to all kinds of parties. I was, I joined a lot of societies. I ran a few clubs. I got heavily involved in the social side of university.
Yep.
And somehow, Rob, I got a degree or two at the end of it.
Yeah, well, I think you're not unique. A lot of the entrepreneurs and people who work for themselves who went to uni and then have done a similar path to you tell the same story. And I heard one guy said, I studied 3 degrees. I got 2, but I couldn't tell you which 2 I got. So when you got into IT, who were you working for and what were you doing?
Well, see, back then I got into IBM. IBM were doing a big recruitment drive, and they were a great company to work for. And I went in as a graduate, bright-eyed, and put on my first, proper suit and everything like that. And I loved it because I went straight into a software engineering type of a role. Yeah. But to be honest, it was very technical, and it was more technical than what I wanted to do, because I really wanted to go more on the business side of things and how things work rather than the technology side. Yes. So I moved quickly out of that into a marketing role, and marketing/finance and operations.
Yep.
And really, I got to work with a lot of different clients and a lot of different parts of the organization, and it just opened up my eyes into the world of business or big business.
Yeah. So you enjoyed your time there?
Yeah, I loved it. I made some great friends. I met some very interesting people, all different backgrounds. Once again, when you work for a large organization, you really expand your social circle. I went to a lot of events, in marketing and sales. I was always going to things. I was always attending things, and got to a stage where I started presenting and being in front of groups of people, and running workshops and running little events here and there. And look, it was exciting. It was a great time.
So you learned the art of networking very young.
Yes. I learned the whole bit of networking, and to be honest, I really enjoyed that part of it. That's probably the bit that I loved in my job, because that's really what I did at university. It's what I loved doing. When I was in school, I was a bit of a shy kid. I wouldn't say I was, the most outgoing kid, but I think a lot of that changed as I got to expand beyond my comfort zone and learn some new skills, and then I began to enjoy it.
I help people get over the perceived fear of public speaking. Listening to you there, I think the only thing that probably changed was you got confidence.
Yeah, you're right. And it wasn't something I deliberately wanted to learn. It just I was thrust in that area, and I began to thrive in it only because it excited me. It made me happy. I met people that were interesting. I was learning. Yeah. And I guess when you have all these different elements that surround you, it only lifts you up. And so that gave me the confidence to keep going.
Oh, look, when something excites you, it's not a chore, it's not a job, is it? You just get in and do it. Yeah,
that's right.
So what was your next step after IBM?
Yeah, look, I ended up being with IBM for about 8 years. I did lots of different roles. I was fortunate to do a lot of Asia Pacific type roles where you travel around Asia and to the US, because it's an American company. And I traveled all around Australia too. So, I got to travel to all the major cities around the country, New Zealand as well. And it was a fantastic time, Rob. The first 5 or 6, 7 years that I was there, I really got to see a lot, do a lot, meet a lot of people. And at the back of my mind, I was always wondering, what is the next step? And I looked at my boss, I looked at my manager. Do I want their job? Do I want to move in that order? but I could never really put my finger on it, and so I felt a little bit lost, but I just kept going because opportunities kept presenting themselves.
So what was the watershed for you to leave?
Well, I actually got poached. So it's interesting because I wanted to go to the UK, and I just turned 30 or about that age, and I think it was sort of the cutoff when you could do this working holiday visa, so they call, and you pretty much got to do it by about that time frame, or you become an old hat. And so I said to myself, look, I'll go to the UK. I had a lot of friends and family there, and I've got my roots in Portugal and places like that. So I thought, this is fantastic. I'll go there. I'll expand. Right. And at about that time, I got approached by someone I knew at work who worked for a competitor company called Oracle.
Yes, and I know Oracle.
They offered me an insane amount of money to come and work over there. And then I thought to myself, gee, if I do that, I can buy my first house. I can do this and I can do that. And so I put some plans on hold to travel to the UK, and I went and worked for Oracle. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And that was the next chapter of my journey.
So what were you doing for Oracle?
I was in sales.
Yeah.
I was in sales, business development. And once again, I was leading a team over there and did a lot of travel. Very exciting, met some great people. But about that time, Rob, is when I really started to question, do I want to spend the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life in this corporate environment? I guess, now that I'd seen a couple of big companies and how they operated, and they were both fantastic. Yeah. I started to question myself, do I fit in this environment? Because, I kind of reached that point after about 10, 12 years in corporate. Is this what I want to do with the rest of my life?
Was there something or somebody that put that seed in your mind, or did you see something happen and go, I don't want to be 50 sitting in the corporate office and not done anything for myself?
Look, it wasn't any one particular person, but I think it was a series of things. So, I would notice that in this environment that I was in, there was a lot of competition. There was a lot of, not that that's a bad thing, it's a good thing, but there was a lot of not very genuine people around me. There were a lot of people who would do anything to move ahead. Yes. And I found myself thrust into a lot of the politics side of it, which I personally wasn't very good at and I didn't enjoy. And often at times I felt I had to get a job done, I had to do things that I wasn't always comfortable with, or I had to sidetrack and do things that didn't always leave me in the best place or my team in the best place. And I started to say to myself, look, I don't know if I could do this for much. I'm not cut out for it. I don't have what it takes to make it in this environment. And then I would look at, people that were 20 years older than me, for example, and some of them had 2 failed marriages. They hadn't seen their kids for many years. They're traveling all around the world. They have this incredible lifestyle, but they're very lonely. Yeah. Or they're incredibly stressed. I knew 2 people who had triple bypass surgeries that were, 3 levels above me, senior vice presidents, etc. Nice guys, and one of them was a lady, but just not the lifestyle I aspired to. And at the end of the day, I just started thinking to myself, if I go down this path, I've got a very good chance of being one of those people. And I remember, Rob, being overseas a number of times or traveling for work, and I would miss things like friends' weddings, or I'd miss important occasions, or I'd miss just spending the weekend with my family or something like that. And with friends, I missed a lot of ski trips and, little travel things here and there. And I started to say to myself, I'm always busy and I never have time to do the things I want to do. And I guess when you put all that together, it started the wheels moving for me to think about what else could I be doing.
So what did you do when you said to yourself, right, I don't want to be here? And for the right reason. It wasn't anything against them. It was just that you wanted to do something different in your life. Yeah. What did you do?
Well, about a year before I eventually left Oracle, I started looking at other things. Now, mind you, this was 14 years ago. The internet wasn't as developed as it is today. Yeah. I think Skype had only just arrived on the scene. There wasn't Google and YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. None of this existed. And so, I used to go to seminars. I used to read books like Tony Robbins and listen to DVDs, and even that was quite new back then. I had the tapes and cassettes and things like that, and so I was exploring options on what I was passionate about, what I wanted to do with my life, and what was important to me, my values, etc. And this was a very, I would say, a transformative period for me. And in that period, I stumbled across my partner back then, and we got started, or she had already started a part-time business selling some nutritional products online and things. It was very cutting edge. And I thought, gee, this is interesting. I just liked the fact that she was doing something different. And I started supporting her. Before I knew it, she quit her job. And she was also at Oracle, and she was earning a good six-figure income. And when I saw for the first time someone actually leaving their corporate job to do something that they were passionate about, I formed this belief that I could do it myself. I didn't quite know what I was going to do, but I had never seen that before, because everyone I knew was a corporate employee, was a person who had a job. A lot of them were doing very well, but I didn't know many business people. I didn't really know. I didn't hang around entrepreneurial circles. And so for me, this was a real game changer. And when it happened was during the GFC.
Yes.
It was 2007, 2008. Oracle went into a massive restructuring period, and there were a lot of jobs being redistributed across the company. A lot of them were shed. I was offered another position in the company, lower pay. I lost my team, and I was basically told, if you want to remain with us, you need to move here, and this is what it's going to be. And I decided back then that I'm going to now take that as a sign from the universe that I need to move in a different direction. And so, to be honest, I never really looked back.
Wow. So did you go straight into your own business, or did you move back to Australia and flip hamburgers? What did you do?
No. So I was in Australia already. I was in Australia. And it's funny you talk about flipping hamburgers. As I got into the world of business, I wasn't making anywhere near the kind of money I was earning at Oracle, right? But I had got a taste of earning a check outside of my full-time job, and that was enough. The first couple of $100 outside of my decent salary. And I thought to myself, what else do I need to learn? What skills do I need to develop? Who do I need to be to get to a point where I can live off my own business, whatever that might be? And I did everything. I initially got into the business that my partner was involved in, and it was quite a successful network marketing business. And we actually became the top distributors in Australia in that business, and we traveled around the world with it. But I learned at an early stage, or not early, after doing it for about 5 years, I learned you don't really own that business.
No, you don't.
You're basically an extended part of an extended arm of a much bigger corporation, and you basically have to abide by their rules. Now, I didn't have a problem with that until I found the CEO of the company, who was in the US and who I met many times, was starting to do some things that were unethical, and suddenly it conflicted with my values. And I thought, well, I can't really be a part of this anymore. And to be honest, I walked away from that. And we left a check on the table, and we said, we're going to do something else. And I started my own consulting business to help people with marketing and sales strategies and all, because that's what I knew. That wasn't easy to get off the ground. So I did sales type jobs on the side. I did, I worked for a solar company because I was interested in renewable energy and all of that. And I thought, gee, I could make a difference in that area. I gave sustainability advice to corporations. I basically created work for myself to keep me going while I tried to get the business going on the side.
Would you say now, if you were starting that business now, just your sales consultancy, was it harder then to get customers, or would it be harder today?
It had its own challenges, Rob, back then, because back then I wasn't really very leveraged on the internet. I didn't really have much of a presence. I didn't have any kind of reach. I didn't even really know how to go about it. So a lot of it was, to be honest, the old-fashioned knocking on the door and cold calling and picking up the phone and sending emails, and that's how I drove a lot of business. I'd spend a good 2-3 hours a day canvassing, talking to people, chatting. I did a lot of walking. I went in my car, drove to a lot of places, and I'd find prospects. I would get people's details. I would then sit at home, dedicate a whole week to making phone calls, booking appointments. I really did it the traditional way back then. Today, it's a lot different. I mean, even the way you and I connected was online, different cities, different states, but we're able to do this. You couldn't do this back then.
No.
So, it had its challenges, but again, a very, very learning experience for me.
Before we get into what you do today, I've got a question. Some of the things you've said came up twice, and it's something that actually drew me towards you, and it's something that I've done. A lot of business people leave a job because something happens that goes against their core beliefs and their values. Yeah. And then others stay, and I see them, it rips them apart inside. Yeah. And I've left a job without a job to go to because what was happening I didn't like.
It happens.
With all your experience, how important is it to a person when they go into business to be doing something that doesn't go against their core values or their beliefs?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, I'm one of those people who firmly believe that if you're not doing something that, one, you believe in, or that you're passionate about, you really got to ask yourself the question, am I in the right place? Because, look, you can do any kind of business, Rob, and if you flip hamburgers and you're good at it and you can sell it and you can make money, great. But if it's not something you either believe in, for example, if you've got some belief that around, say, being vegan and not being not being in that industry, yet you are in that business and you are selling a product that you don't truly believe in, you've got to come to a peace within yourself that you can do that and that you're happy to do that. As long as you can do that, you're fine. The minute you start questioning the ethics or the morality or the values associated either with the business, the industry, the people you're working with, I think in the long run, for your own sanity, for your own peace of mind, so that you can sleep well at night, and that you can hold your head up high and say you walk the walk and you're acting from a space of integrity and congruence.
Yeah.
You've got to ask yourself the question. I had to learn that the hard way. Like I said in that first example, I did a business I truly believed in, but the minute I found the leaders of the business were doing something that they were embezzling money and using it in gambling and all sorts of things. And I thought, look, for me, that's not something I believe in. And therefore, I'm going to promote them in a high light. They need to act in integrity, same as me. And the minute there was a disconnect, I'm in the wrong business.
So how hard do you think it is? It's easy for someone to say, I want to break free from the corporate world.
Yeah.
When someone comes and speaks to you and they've got that idea and they're ready to push that button, how hard do you think it really is for someone to make that call and say, I want to break free. I want to get out of the corporate world and do it myself?
Yeah, it's easier said than done, believe me. Because we're all creatures of habit, Rob. We do what we're used to and we do what we are comfortable with. So even though you and I may say, look, it'd be so nice to win the lottery and sit on a beach and enjoy a glass of champagne. If I literally said tomorrow's the last day of your job and you're going to spend the rest of your life on that beach with a glass of champagne, you might think, well, that it might be fine for the first few days. But then what? What am I going to do? And so, we all need to have some structure behind us, and we all need a purpose. And fortunately, the corporate world does give us that. It gives us structure. It gives us a defined role, purpose. You know where you fit in the organization. Hopefully, you've got a good team and people around you. But generally speaking, most people do. And that's the great thing about corporate. Now, to walk away from that into an unknown sort of quantity where, one, you don't really know what your future is going to look like. You don't know if you're going to make the business successful. You don't know if you're going to be able to put bread on the table. There are a lot of tough questions, especially if you've got family, you've got a mortgage, you've got kids, all of that. So just to be able to walk away from one's job is a very daunting prospect. However, I do recommend people look into the possibility of what else you could do on the side of your job. So if you're working, I always recommend to people, Rob, don't quit your job straight away unless you absolutely have to. There's no other option. But when you're in that comfort zone, that's great. Be grateful for it. But that could be taken from you at any point.
Nothing, it can be, yeah.
Right? You know what I'm talking about. So, and I only know this because it happened to me. but fortunately I had something on the side. And even though it wasn't quite matching what I was earning in my job, it gave me that start. And so rather than waiting for yourself to be pushed out, I always recommend to people, start the process of educating yourself, learning, finding out what you enjoy, what are you passionate about, what else could you do, what skills could you acquire, how can you solve a problem, how can you make a difference to someone's life or the community, things like that. And try and find areas that make you happy, that make you curious, and do some research, talk to people who are doing things in that space, and you never know where it can lead you.
So if someone said to you after they've been listening to this podcast, mate, what do you actually do today for a business?
Yeah.
What you do? How would you describe your own job today?
Yeah.
Even though you own the business.
So today I mentor people. I basically help the average everyday person like you and I to get to a better place. I'm not here to tell you to quit your job tomorrow. I'm not here to tell you to go and do something dramatically different, or, sometimes I talk to people, Rob, who say to me, well, what could I do? I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't know what else to do. So the first place to start is to, like I said, ask some of these questions, do some research. You'll find there's a lot of things you could do in the world. You just need to start poking and prodding, and you lift one stone and you'll find there's another one there. And you open one door and there's another door. And the more you train yourself to think in that way, everything you start noticing becomes opportunities. And it's fascinating. I mean, even putting a podcast together and interviewing people, you learn just by doing it. But is that something you enjoy doing? You never know. You might write a book, right? And I know you're in the process of doing that. And you might just discover things as you go through this learning process that opens new doors. And as you start hanging around like-minded people, ideas just start flowing more and more and more. So the short answer to all of that was I help people get on that journey and start the process.
I was watching a show out of the States called Undercover Billionaire.
Oh, yeah.
And they dropped 3 billionaires in 3 towns in America that they've never been to, with a pickup truck and a phone with no contacts at all. And they have 90 days to build a business worth $1 million, or they have to put $1 million in. And exactly what you just said. They don't have any accommodation or nothing, got $100.
Yeah.
So they actually, all 3 of them achieved it.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. Grant Cardone's one of them. He was one of the guys.
Yep.
And 2 other ladies. And they just went out and asked people in the town, what does the town need? What are they missing?
Yeah. And
their drive was unbelievable. And they have some failures along the way. They've got no one to mentor them like you do with people around. So exactly what you're saying, people do and do every day.
100%.
When in this post-COVID world and what we call the new digital world, where Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 doesn't longer exist, going into an office 5 days a week doesn't exist. It's all changed. With people starting businesses up now, what do you see is going to be their biggest challenge for someone brand new, solopreneur as we call them, and they want to get going in Australia or Europe at the moment? Where will they start, and what have they got to look out for?
Well, like you said, in that example you gave of those 3 billionaires, I think the first place to start is, before you even start the business, you haven't got a business unless you're providing value. Yes. And so, I would almost be recommending that they ask some questions of what is needed, so you've got to unpack this. What are some of the problems that people are facing today? What are some of the challenges that people are facing? When I say people, it could be people, organizations, small businesses. What are the challenges that these people or entities are facing? Now, once you've uncovered some of those, you can now decide which of those areas do I want to, or do I think I have skills or abilities to make a difference? Yeah. Right? For example, if you're a teacher and you might go, gee, I wouldn't know the first thing of how to start a business. But if you're good at teaching, you'd be good at communicating, you'd be good at imparting knowledge, you'd be good at training, and you start looking at how your skills can diversify, right? If you're a HR person, right, and you're working in HR right now in corporate, or and you're thinking, gee, I don't know what I could do. I just work in HR. But you're a people person. You connect the dots. You're the glue that holds the company together. You know how to, you know what I'm saying? If you're a finance person or an accounting person, you're a numbers person. But more than that, you understand revenue, profit, loss. You understand balance sheets. You can see where revenue is coming in. You can see where expenses are going out. You can justify things. You can put a proposal together. You can really read between the lines. And so you again, there are a lot of people who don't have these skills. If you're a salesperson, I mean, you're really in a strong position to be able to convey information or knowledge, or basically help someone get what they want as a trade for, paying you a fee.
Yep.
So you're able to sell products and services. Now the guys in the pickup trucks, right? They obviously, being successful as they are, would have had a little bit of all of this information, but they asked the most important question: what does the town need? And the minute they know what's needed, they can put together a plan, and then they can say, well, look, I think we can put this together to solve this problem. Now, I can't do it all, but who else could assist? And they probably were very quick at building a team.
Exactly. Exactly.
Grant Cardone talks about it all the time. He's someone, he says, you can't do it on your own. You've got to put an A-class team together. And I'm sure these guys put a team very quickly together and were able to start delivering on projects. He probably created they created jobs, they created income. That's how they probably grew it to $1 million business.
Without seeing the show, you nailed it. That's exactly what they did. I had someone come to me one day. He said, what am I going to do? I said, what do you mean? He said, I've lost my job. I've always sold real estate. I said, and? He said, I only know real estate. I said, what's that got to do with it? He looked at me. I said, sales is sales. Yeah. I said, it's just the product that's different.
Yeah.
I've been in 3 main industries. I started one job where I knew one product, and this company had thousands. The people I went and spoke to never knew that.
Yeah.
I just used my sales skills, wrote down everything they asked me, went back to the warehouse or the shop and said, can you translate that into English, please? But all it was a product.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying. I just found out what they needed, found out my price, and went back and said, yeah, I can give you that for this price. Oh, no worries. Sold.
Exactly.
It's amazing to what you're saying there. Do you see now with people who've actually readdressed their life, readdressed who they are, what they're doing, in many cases have found out they have a family at home, they have children and partners that love them. Do you see more people breaking away from the corporate and going it alone or going into business for themselves because they just want a better quality of life?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do it for different reasons, Rob. A lot of people will do it because they want a better life for their family, or they want to improve their situation for their kids. The people who do it for themselves, if they're single or they live alone, I mean, there's other reasons. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's to achieve something. It's a goal that they set for themselves. So a lot of people have different reasons. I've had people go into business where they left a very significantly high paying job in corporate for a much lower paying business, but it gave them the lifestyle they wanted. They had a quality of life which they couldn't have had in corporate. No. And so, I've had people leave the corporate world because of health reasons, the stress, the expectations, the having to answer to calls and meetings and be on the road and presentations and all that kind of delivery stuff. And so I think it really depends what is, again, before you even go down this path, ask yourself the question, if you're listening to this, what is important to me? What do I want to achieve in life? And I always get people to do a 3-step sort of vision to goals process. And I'm happy to share it with you if you like.
Yeah, please.
But basically, you have a 3 to 5 year vision, which is where do I want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? I call that a long-term plan. Now, some people go, gee, that's not long-term. But you can change your life. You can change the world has changed in less than 18 months. So you can certainly change your life in 3 to 5 years. But when I'm talking 10 or 20 years from now, 3 to 5, where do you want to be? How do you envision your life to be? Right? And so that's the first thing. What are the things you want to tick off over there? Then let's drop it down a notch and go 12 months. So this is in the next 12 months time, where do you see yourself you might still be in your job, that's fine,
Yeah.
but maybe you've learned some new skills. Maybe you've done a course on the side. Maybe you've engaged with some people, you've tried something, you've put a little proposal together, you've done a few things, maybe you've got a mentor, maybe you have picked up some new skills, whatever. But what do you see happening in the next 12 months, right? And then break it down one level lower and ask yourself, what do I need to do in the next 90 days to get to that plan? So you've got 4 lots of 90 days in a year. And so you work off a 90-day plan. You can see the engineer in me. This is just how I go 90 days, that leads up to the 12 months. If I can get there, I'm one step closer to my 3 to 5 year vision. And then you make sure they're all aligned. So if I want to do something in my 3 to 5 year plan, but I haven't got any action today that's aligning with that, I'm out of sync, right? So they've got to be aligned. And the good thing about all of this is, as Brian Tracy really eloquently put it in Flight Plan, he said, if you find you're veering off course, you can make little course corrections, and you're better off making course corrections along the journey, because if you end up 1 degree out of sync today and you don't correct yourself, you could, by the time 10 years comes by, you could be like at opposite ends. And so I think it's good to know where you're going, but really focus on the task at hand and just have little goals and little milestones that you can judge yourself and you can course correct. And, so you got a path.
I think anyone listening to that, if they're a bit concerned about course corrections, just ask Blockbuster, Kodak, and Toys R Us.
100%.
They didn't change. They said, no, we're doing the right thing, and the market went one way, and they're no longer with us.
They were great companies too.
Yeah.
Fantastic companies.
That was stunning how they stuffed that up.
Yeah.
Mate, last question on the actual business side of it.
Sure.
How important is it, and this is, I know this, people might say there's a bit of a vested interest because it is what you do, but how important is it for someone to have a mentor or a guide when they start, rather than going it alone and believing they know it all?
Yeah, look, really good question. So I never even knew what a mentor was. Let's go back a little bit. When I was in my corporate days, I did have mentors in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And I looked up to those people as people who had done what I want to do. They're where I want to be. So that was my thought process. If I'm going to make it in this job or in this career path, I really need to be talking to these people. Why? Because they've done it. They've put in the hard yards. They've got to a certain position because of all their experience and what they know. And there's no way I could know what's in their head if I didn't spend time with them, have lunch with them, catch up with them. And so I had mentors in corporate that weren't even in my team. They weren't even aligned in my business. They were in other areas of the business. I had some mentors that were in other businesses that I would catch up with. Now, you meet people through networking, and this is how you find your mentors. In business, I think it's absolutely critical. Again, if you want to get to a certain point, but you've never been there, how are you going to get there? If you don't talk to or hang around or learn from people that have done it, I mean, you can do it on your own, but it's a really, really tough journey to do it on your own. And you just have to ask anyone who has done it on their own that has never had a mentor, and they'll tell you all the mistakes that they made. And then you have to decide, do I want to make all those mistakes as well? And I figured out after a few years, when I first got it started in business, that I'm tired of making mistakes. I'm not saying I don't make mistakes. I still make plenty of mistakes, but they're more calculated risks that I take every now and again. But I've got at least 3 mentors that I work with right now, Rob. One of them is my karate instructor. So in 2 months' time, I'll be a black belt in karate. And I've had a mentor in that space, in the martial arts space, for several years. Now, this guy's been running his business for 21 years, and he's a young guy. But what I learned from him is things like persistence, patience, dedication, focus, turning up, even when I don't want to turn up, doing the basics, never getting too far ahead of yourself. And when you know enough, or you know more than the person next to you, you need to start teaching and helping lift them up. So, these are things I learned from that side. I have a mentor in the digital marketing space, for example. One of the guys is a good friend of mine, runs the number 1 marketing agency in Australia, King Kong. And he helps me with a lot of things. And again, he's far younger than I am, but he's a lot smarter, and he's done things I don't even understand. And so when I have questions, I pick his brain, right? And I go, what would you do in this circumstance? Or should I do this? Or what do you think would happen if I did that? And there's another mentor that I talk to. And another great mentor of mine is Dale Beaumont, who runs a business training program. I think I mentioned to you last time.
I've been to one of his, yes.
You have, yes. And he helped me write my first book. Now, he's a best-selling author in Australia. Who knows better how to write a book than he does? So he taught me how to do that. Now, again, a mentor can play a really important role in just developing your journey at an accelerated pace. You can do it on your own, or you can do it with the help of someone and stand on the shoulder of giants, which is something that a lot of famous philosophers and teachers will say is the smarter way of doing things.
So what would you say if you were walking down Central Station and you ran into your 18-year-old self falling out of one of the pubs down around Central in Sydney, and he looked up at you and he said, what would you tell me? What bit of advice would you give yourself when you're 18 at university?
Oh, gee, good question. I mean, I've often thought about, would I change anything in my life? You know, do I have any regrets? Would I? And it's a bit of a tricky question, Rob, because to be honest, you know, on one hand, you wouldn't be where you are today if you changed anything in your past.
True.
So I'd be very remiss in saying that I probably would tell my 18-year-old, maybe don't go to that pub anymore if you're falling down all the time, but enjoy life, keep an open mind, learn, discover, learn some new skills, and invest heavily in YouTube and Google and all of them, and Microsoft when they come out. So companies like that. But on a serious note, I would say do something you're happy with. If you find at any point that you're not enjoying what you're doing, don't feel compelled to stick with it just to please other people. And for a long time, I stayed in the corporate world because in my culture and in my background, it was a very big deal to do something and make your parents proud and make your family proud and all of that. And I did. But the funny thing is, when I stepped away from that, and I even have an MBA and all of these other things, and when I stepped away and started doing my own business, I had a lot of family members and people, friends of mine, that said to me, so Gavin, like, when are you going to get a real job again? Or,
ouch.
or you've are you okay? Are you everything okay? Are you managing? Are you paying the bills? Are you, like, what are you doing these days? You wrote a book. Oh, that's great. So where are you working these days? and it's, these are people who mean well. They love you, they care for you, but they don't necessarily understand your journey. So you've got to hang around people who understand you, can support you, can help you grow in that space. So maybe the other thing I would tell my young self is find people that think like you, or if you want to get to a certain place, find someone who's either done it and be a sponge, just be open and learn and enjoy life.
Yeah, there's actually a university study that's come out that says, as we know the cliche, you are the five people you hang around with the most. And it's been proven that if you are hanging around people who are super fit, or you are hanging around people who are obese, you have a 45% chance more probable of being exactly who they are.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And that's been proven. So I hear what you're saying and all that.
Yeah.
If we were down at Tanunda in South Australia, and for those who are my overseas listeners, that is the home of Australian wine, to be honest. That is where the majority of our most awesome wine comes from. I mean, we make wine all over the country, but Tanunda in South Australia is amazing.
Beautiful place. Yeah.
Oh, it's a beautiful. It's and you pulled into one of the beautiful wineries down there, and it's there. We've got cheese. We've got a nice cab sav, and there's you and two seats. Who would you invite to share the wine and the Cabernet Sauvignon with?
Oh, gee, you're putting me on the spot now.
Awesome. I love it when I do that to people. Could anyone in the world?
Anyone, living, past, present?
I gave a lady this morning that I interviewed a pass for people who were passed over.
Okay.
So I'm going to do the opposite to you and say they've got to be living.
They've got to be living? To be honest, that's
anybody.
I would actually, one of them would probably be, I'd probably say one of them would be Richard Branson.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'll tell you why. It's not so much because he's famous and he's a billionaire. I actually really love his story. I like the way he thinks. Someone who was dyslexic at school, not good, he dropped out, was told he would never amount to anything.
True.
And he never intended to get into business. I've read his books. I have done a lot of research on this guy, and I'm still learning. But what I love is his zest for life. He lives his life. He lives with passion. He lives with purpose. And yes, he's just good at business, but he's one of those people. He empowers people. He makes a difference in the world. He loves to do that. He loves to educate. And so he'd be someone I'd just love to have a chat with, because I think I could learn a lot. I could get a lot of passion from just talking to someone, the energy that you would get. Probably the other person would be Sylvester Stallone. from Rocky. I'm really thinking outside the square. I'm not necessarily thinking,
he would be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know his story. So again, someone who, against the odds, and really back against the wall. I mean, this guy obviously became successful after making the Rocky series and all, which he wrote and started. But it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't have persisted. But at one point, he was so poor he had to sell his own dog to pay for the rent for the following week. And it wasn't until he made enough money he went back to the guy to buy his dog back, because he never wanted to do it, but he had to stay alive. Yeah. And when you think of the hardships that people have to go through just to get to where, because they have a dream and they never let it go. And I think sitting in front of someone like that would just inspire me beyond words. So I guess having those two people and a nice glass of Cab Sav in Tanunda would be a dream come true.
Yes, I've had a few of the Cab Savs down there, but no one too famous.
Yeah.
Gavin, how, if people wanted to get in touch with you or hear a bit more about your story, what you do and how would you do, where do they find you?
Yeah, look, you can look up my name, Gavin Sequeira. LinkedIn is a good place. Yep. I'm on LinkedIn. I work with a lot of corporate people, so that is a good place to find me. Yep. I do have a profile on Facebook as well. I am on other social media, but Facebook and LinkedIn would be the two. You can also go to breakfreefromcorporate.com. That's my website.
Yep.
And on there's a lot of good material that you can either download, watch, read, listen to, ebooks, webinars, that sort of stuff. But as you mentioned at the beginning, I do run a podcast as well. So I interview people who have made the transition from corporate into their business, irrespective of how successful they are. The fact that they've just done that is a fantastic thing. And I love to capture people's stories. Some of them are my clients. Some of them are just people I know. But I love sharing those stories to inspire other people to take the journey. Because, Rob, life is for living. We work to live, or this is what I think. We work to live, not live to work, right? And if you do what you enjoy doing, well, you never have to work a day in your life. So that's
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. It's been an even bigger pleasure to talk to a fellow Aussie that's making a go of it and certainly helping people improve their lives. So
thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as well.
Mate, it's been awesome. And I'm going to say farewell to everyone. And as we always say at the end of our podcast, have a groovy day.